Win big with new DRF All Access Past Performances. With one best-in-class product, you now get all three past performance formats. Go to DRF.com and use coupon code 1FREEPP for a free single card today.
Hi, everybody. Dan Illman and Mike Beer taking a look at the DRF race of the day for Saturday, October the 26th. It's race number 8 at Keeneland. It's the Grade 2 Fayette. We're going 1 1/8 miles on the main track. Before we take a look at the field, remember 10% off DRF past performances. Use the coupon code DRFTV10. Shop now. Access the QR code on your screen. Let's take a look at the field for the Fayette. Remember, you can access free formulator past performances for this race on the Race of the Day event page at DRF.com. Take a peek at them and handicap along with us. Hit Show, the number 8, is the 2-1 morning line favorite, and why not? Hit Show's coming into this race off 2 graded stakes wins. He's got plenty of back class, and he's well connected.
Yeah, he makes perfect sense in here as the favorite, Dan. Not only, I feel like he's the one horse in there that maybe you could even project even more upside from, Dan. He was a good 3-year-old. He's improved a little bit here at 4. Comes off 2 nice wins.
Let's throw up the time form US pace projector. The good thing we've seen from Hit Show in the last few races is that he's tactical and pace adaptable, and here we have him sort of sitting in mid-pack as the number 8. Tumbarumba should show speed. He's stretching out after a couple of one-turn mile races, the last one where he was up and on the pace, and I think his only chance here, Mike, is if he can get to the front and back down the pace somewhat. He never got a breather last time.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think there is a chance that he just makes the lead here. The distance is obviously a little bit of a question for him. Maybe the 9 is just on a real send-in here, first time off of a really long layoff, and maybe that heats the pace up. Either way, I thought Tumbarumba will be forward, and I thought he could get a good trip in there, and I also felt like the horse that's drawn to the route, Trademark, it's a good trip coming for that horse.
And if the pace is fast, keep an eye on the Millionaire, the number 6, Rattle and Roll. Note the LP flag over his chiclet. That means he has the fastest time form US late pace rating. Let's start things off with Trademark. And Trademark won the Grade 2 Clark last year at a big price at 1 1/8 miles. So we know he has it in him. The problem is he's a bit of an in and outer. We haven't seen that performance, the Clark-like performance in his subsequent starts. Last time, first start off a little bit of a layoff, finished behind a couple of these, but at a price, you could consider this horse is going to trip out. He'll give it his all. I kind of like him underneath.
Right. No, I agree with all that stuff, Dan. I mean, it just feels like there's a really good trip coming for him. I can't say I'm a huge fan of this horse, but he's got a race in him that will give him a real chance against this field. The Clark, when he won the Clark at the end of last year, he just got a perfect trip in that race, and he came running in the stretch, and he just got the job done. You get another perfect trip here.
Tumbarumba, the number 2, returned off a 3-month layoff last time out in the one-turn Grade 3 ACAC. The pace wasn't fast, but it sure was contested. It was a 4-horse field, and Tumbarumba was part of a 3-ply speed duel while on the inside. Put away the other 2 horses, but 3 Technique, who's a pretty good miler in his own right, was the one sitting in the catbird seat, and he got Tumbarumba. Tumbarumba ran well enough to win, and he's got speed. 1 1/8 miles terrifies me.
Yeah, anything longer than 1 mile terrifies me with this horse. He's really good, and it's interesting too, because when you pick apart his form, and they don't stretch him out that often, Dan, but the last 3 times they went 2 turns with him, 96 buyer in the Go Zapper, 95 buyer down at the fairgrounds, Oklahoma Derby last year. He misses ahead with a 95. I mean, those figures are right in line with the best races this horse has ever run.
The 3 is Uno Mas Bourbon. He's all upside. He's a lightly raced 3-year-old that just scored against fellow 3-year-olds in the Super Derby at this distance at Louisiana Downs. We watch Uno Mas Bourbon. He showed some moxie in here, Mike. He's got to bull his way out from in behind horses and split them, and he's going to do it. And once he does and sees clear air, he rolls by the leaders to win. The runner-up would come back to win an allowance race at Delta Downs with an 85 buyer speed figure. He needs a buyer boost. He needs to do a little bit more, but I like this performance. He looks like a solid performer.
Yeah, I like that. I like that race too. That's nice too that he's just looking at his 3 dirt starts so far this year, just really progressing very nicely from start to start. I really liked his win last time. Unfortunately, it's not. You and I, Dan, we're old enough to remember when the Super Derby really meant something. Doesn't really mean that much anymore, but this horse ran really well in there.
War Campaign, the number 4, finished second to the favorite, Mr. Wireless, in his most recent start. That was a first-level allowance race. Something tells me that Phil Simms was using that race as a springboard to the Fayette. This is a horse that has run well in graded stakes in the past. He was second in the Ben Ali over a mile and 3/16 at Keeneland during the spring. So he's got a race in him. I thought he had a chance in the stretch, a look at it before flattening out just a bit. But again, I think they used that race as a prep.
That's probably true. I mean, listen, he's obviously good enough to be competitive in here. Whether or not you want to take him on top in a race like this, that's sort of a different question. That he just doesn't seem like he's quite good enough to win races like this unless he catches a break or two along the way at some kind of big price. I wouldn't argue too hard with him, but I didn't really like him enough to want to take him on top in this race.
Frankie Dettori picks up the mount on the number 5, Bowlesy, who's been tested in his last 2 races and just hasn't been up to the test. He was well beaten in the Razorback handicap, and then off the layoff. You can give him the layoff excuse and maybe a wet track. He has run well over it in the past. In the Lucas Classic, when behind Hit Show, he just didn't do enough in that Lucas Classic that makes me think he can turn it all around at a big price here.
I agree. Maybe the long layoff there is enough to just maybe want to give him a pass for that one and just think he's going to run better this time. I mean, they're going to enter him right back in another tough spot. So I guess the connections really like him, Dan. I didn't see it.
Speaking of long layoffs, the 6 Rattle and Roll returned from 364 days on the sidelines in the Lucas Classic last time out. He caught a sloppy track. He got a pretty solid pace to run at, and he flattened out just a little bit late, which could be expected off the bench. I think at least it showed he can still run a little bit.
Yeah.
And if he needed that race and can take a step forward in the second start of the form cycle, he can kick these horses down.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how I looked at it too. I mean, he ran fine last time. There was never a point where it looked like he was going to win, but he got himself into contention there. It's not like there was a ton of closing going on in that race, but he was making up ground right down to the end. He had every right to need that race, Dan. I'm sure a wet track isn't exactly what McPeak was looking for in his first start back off the layoff either. He's got plenty of races from last year as a 4-year-old that would make him super tough in here.
Heroic Move is kind of interesting, Mike. He comes off a second place finish to Hit Show in the West Virginia Governors, but if you just go back and watch that race in your free formulator past performances, click on the short comment. It's a tale of 2 trips, at least from a distance covered standpoint. Hit Show was able to get the run of the rails at just the most opportune moment. Heroic Move had to go wide, and I wonder if that made all the difference.
Me too. I mean, I don't think 6-1 is the right price for me with this horse, Dan. But there's a case to be made for him. I mean, it's not like that last one's the only fast race he's ever run. He's run some fast ones on the go back. If you just switch the trips from that West Virginia Governor's Cup last time, I'm not so sure Heroic Move doesn't beat Hit Show.
And I know some folks are going to be questioning distance with Heroic Move, but the first time Diodoro got him, he moved him to Western Canada like he does a lot in those Western Canadian derbies. Those are all distance races. He thinks the horse fits the profile. Hit Show is up next, and he's the horse to beat for Brad Cox. He got a perfect trip in the West Virginia Governors. And I got to be honest with you, I thought the trip was there for him again in the Lucas Classic, where he just settled in a perfect tracking spot behind 3 speeds. He had to work to win that race over a sloppy track. He's never going to wow you with brilliance, but he shows up, he gets trips, and he often runs hard in the stretch.
It's a great way to describe him, Dan. I mean, I don't really have much to add to it. He got a great trip last time. He had to work really hard to get the job done, but he got the job done over Cook Creek, a horse who's just been in really, really good form. I mean, I don't really have any knocks on this horse other than I don't know that he really holds that much of an edge, especially, over his main rival, who I think is Rattle and Roll. I don't think this horse has that big of an edge over that horse, and he's a much shorter price.
In some ways, the number 9 Grand Aspen is sort of the X factor in this race because it looked like during the summer and fall of 2023, this horse was beginning to come into his own. A first level allowance win at Churchill Downs, a good placing in the Grade 3 Harlan's Holiday, and then they threw him to the Wolves in the Pegasus World Cup. What chance did he have in that race? This is a long layoff. He's now with Jonathan Thomas, who's having a really good year. This horse should show fresh speed from the outside. We'll see if he's ready to go 1.125 miles off the bench.
Yeah, I'm going to just take the wait and see approach with this horse then to see what happens. Maybe Thomas will really get this horse going forward now as a 5-year-old. I didn't like his form all that much when Pletcher had him. I know that he looks okay on paper. He ran some good races. I feel like I could poke enough holes in this horse. I don't really like this horse that much.
Howling Time completes the field on the far outside, and last time out in a high-level allowance at Churchill, the race where War Campaign ran second, he was a little bit slow from the gate. I wouldn't say he broke slow, he just was very tentatively ridden after being perhaps slightly pinched back. He was last early, but there was pace for him. He swung to the outside, and I thought he finished okay, but if he runs that sort of race, I don't know if it's good enough to win this.
Yeah, so far anyway, none of his races as a 5-year-old are good enough to win this. There have been some stops and starts. They've tried some different things with him. They tried sprinting him. They tried turf a couple of times. I feel like they're really trying to figure out where he's going to fit right now as an older horse.
Before we take a look at our top selections, please click the subscribe button on the Daily Racing Form YouTube channel for the latest DRF videos. Breeders' Cup next week, we are going to be loaded with coverage. Let's take a look at our top selections for the Fayette Stakes. Rattle and Roll, second off the bench. He's an old class master. Give him some pace, he'll run in the stretch.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the betting shakes out in here, Dan, because to me, at the morning line odds, I thought it was a pretty easy call to take the 6 over the 8 here. I have a lot of respect for Hitchcock. I'm a big fan of his, but at those morning line odds, I'm taking the 6.
I think that's a very fair way to look at it. I think from a tactical standpoint, Hitcho is going to get the jump on Rattle and Roll turning into the stretch. And we'll see if Rattle and Roll has that spring in his legs to get him in the final 16th of a mile. Hitcho's in good form right now, but it's a very good point. I couldn't take anything less than the 2-1 morning line. I'm not sure I'd take the 2. It's that competitive a field. 6-8-7-2 for Mike, 8-6-2-4 for me. For the Fayette, Saturday's DRF race of the day. It's at Keeneland where they have 3 stakes on Saturday. Good luck.
Hey friends, you look like you're in need of a winner. If you enjoyed the great content right here, just click and subscribe right here and enjoy the great DRF.com race of the days, the phenomenal stakes previews, and so much more. Many of that content featuring me and my exceptional selections. Trust me, you won't regret it.